Today I want to show you how to make perfect half square triangles using a traditional method. Hi, I'm Kim Jamison Hurst of Chatterbox Quilts, and so many people love making projects with half square triangles, but get really frustrated when their half square triangles aren't perfect and points get cut off or too much is showing past the point, that type of thing. Well, I want to show you how to make a half square triangle using a traditional method, but the difference is that we are going to make it bigger and trim it down a bit. Now, I can hear you already talking about you're wasting fabric. Well, very, very little amount, but what it will result in is a perfect half square triangle, and your projects are going to look so much better. So let's talk about the traditional way of making a half square triangle. Usually you talk about what finished size of half square triangle you want. So for example, if you want a 3-inch half square triangle finished, you will usually cut your pieces, 2 squares, 7/8 of an inch bigger. So in this case, you'd cut them at 3 7/8 of an inch. And then you would put them together in a certain way and cut them apart and everything, and then they're supposed to be perfect. But a lot of times they aren't. So instead of cutting them 7/8 of an inch bigger, I'm going to cut them 1 inch bigger. So if I want a 3-inch finished half square triangle, I'm going to cut my squares 4 inches. And there's something else I want to mention about them. I do have 2 squares here that are 4 inches cut. But before I even cut them, what's really important, and this is for any cutting you do, you want to prepare your fabric, and that means spraying it with some type of a starch. Now, my favorite method is to use the Acorn Precision Piecing Products Easy Press solution. And if you haven't heard about them, where have you been? But I have videos to show you how to use that product and why I like it so much. So check up above, and I'll also put a link in the description below so you can see about that product. And it's really important because it helps to ensure that when I'm cutting, I'm not pulling the fibers as much as keeping the fibers nice and tight in there. So as I mentioned, I have cut 2 4-inch squares. Okay, that's what we're going to start with. And your traditional method is to put them right sides together, making sure those edges all line up nicely. And then to draw a line across on the diagonal. So you can either draw a line across on the diagonal like this, and stitch a 1/4 inch away from that line on either side, or I'm using this Quilter's Magic Wand, which is from Studio 180 Designs. If you aren't familiar with the Magic Wand, all the wonderful colors it comes in, check in the description below because I'll put a link to that product. And using it, it has a line that is engraved, I believe, down the center. So I'm going to line that line up with the corners on the diagonal of the lighter colored fabric, right? And this is the back side of the fabric. And then I'm just going to draw. I'm using a friction pen. So whatever you like to use, I'm going to just draw along the edge of the magic wand on both sides there. Okay, so you can see my friction pen line there. Now I'm not going to press it now, right? Because the line will go away. What I'm doing and why I'm doing this is because these are my sewing lines. Those are my stitching lines. So this gives me the most accurate stitching line because I'm going to stitch right on those lines rather than trying to make sure I'm exactly a 1/4 inch away from a drawn diagonal line. Okay, so I'm going to go to the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch on either side of that line, and then I'm going to come back and show you what to do next. So here's my 2 squares sewn together, all right, along those lines. And now I just want to cut them in half. So I'm just going to line up my ruler on that diagonal. It does not have to be perfect, but just make sure you're cutting in between the lines. All right, so there they are. And now what I want to do is I want to open them up and press them. So now I want to press them to the dark side, and to do that, I want to make sure they get nice and flat. So I'm going to use my Easy Press solution from Acorn Precision Piecing Products. So check below for a description, in the description I should say, for a link to that product, which is an essential tool in my quilt studio. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to press those just to make sure that I'm not getting any bubbles there. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of the Easy Press solution on there. Let's sit for a few seconds. Same thing here. All right, now I can go back to the first one and press it down. Nice and flat. That gets my seams so nice and flat, I love it. And yes, you're going to have some dog ears here, but we're not worried about those because we're going to be trimming these little half square triangles up. And so that will get rid of those little dog ears as well. All right, so now I've got these nice and flat, and you can see that they're not quite where they should be yet, right? So the next step is to trim them down, so I'm going to show you how to do that. So we've got this half square triangle, we have two of them, and I'm just working with one, obviously. And what you need to do now is trim it down, okay? Remember, we wanted to have a 3-inch finished half square triangle. That means that to start with, the half square triangle, which is really a square, needs to be 3.5 inches square. Right now, it's larger than that, right? Because we started off with the larger size squares. So what you need to do is you need to have a rotary cutter, a mat, and you need to have a ruler, most importantly, a ruler that has a 45-degree lines on it like this one does. So there's a 45-degree this way, there's a 45-degree that way, okay? We're going to start on one side, this side of the half square triangle. Doesn't matter where you start, but I'm just doing this. And you want to remember that you need that 45-degree line on the seam line, okay? That's the first thing. Now we may be moving the ruler around, but that's where that 45-degree line goes. And because we're looking for a 3.5-inch square, that's what we're cutting down to now, you need to make sure that your 3.5-inch line on your ruler is inside that square. In other words, there needs to be fabric past the 3.5-inch mark on your ruler, okay? So that's what we're starting with. So I've got my 45-degree line. I know there's some fabric outside of the 3.5-inch line on my ruler, and now I can trim this one side down. So I'm just going to trim that off, and that takes care of that little dog ear there, one of them. Now I want to lift up my ruler, and I want to rotate my block to the left once, okay? Just once. Now we need to find that 45-degree line again. You might be using the other one, probably are. That crosses it. And we're looking for that 3.5-inch line on our ruler too. Now, if you want to, you can use washi tape, or there's other types of tape that you can put on the back of your ruler just so that you can see that 3.5-inch line really quickly. I'm not worried too much about it because I'm using, it's the same one all the time. I'm only going to make 4 cuts here, so I'm not too concerned. However, if you're someone that, may forget, you could certainly put tape along the edge there, and that will remind you what line you're working with. So I've got my 45-degree line. I've got a little bit of fabric, and it doesn't matter how much fabric you are here, just enough that there's some fabric on this side to trim as well, because you're going to trim all 4 sides, okay? So I've got that there. Let's trim this side. Let's get rid of another dog ear, okay? So you can see just little bits, okay? Now we're rotating again. Remember, rotate once to the left, all right? Now we're working on the white fabric, and we're looking at the 45-degree line, lining it up again. Now, we have done some trimming already on 2 sides, correct? So at this point in time, you want to line up that 3.5-inch line exactly on the edge of the square, okay? On that side, and making sure, there's kind of 2 things going on here, right? You're checking to make sure the 3.5 inches there. You're checking to make sure that that diagonal line, that 45-degree line, is right along the seam. And we trim, okay? One more turn. We've done all 4 sides. So again, find the 45. The 3.5 should be right along the edge of that red fabric. You always have to move things. There's 2 things going on, right? So you always have to check everything. And a little bit of extra that you do here will result in that really nice, perfect half square triangle you want. All right, so remember at the beginning of the video, I said you're going to get upset with me. You're going to say we're wasting fabric. This is our fabric waste. So it's pretty small. And what you end up with is a really nice half square triangle, perfectly halfway through those diagonal points. It's exactly the right size. It's 3.5 inches. It's ready to be used in your projects. So if you have always struggled with making half square triangles with a traditional method, there are other ways to make half square triangles, and I have videos on some of those too, in where you use tools. So check the description below and I'll put links to those videos as well. But if you want to be old school and go with the traditional method of making half square triangles where you make 2 at a time, this is a really great way to do it. Make them a little bit larger. You can make them larger than I did, but if you really want that minimal waste, just a little bit larger, and you'll get that perfect half square triangle. Thanks for watching today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to share it with your quilting friends. And remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified the next time I release a new video. And before you go, Check out these other videos I've included just for you. For more helpful quilting information, please go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.